Hello, my sunshines, and welcome to episode 20 of Your Session with me, Dr. Deborah Brown. And it is very exciting. It's our season finale. This is the end of our very first season of the podcast, and we have done 20 episodes, and this is number 20. And we're stopping our season here because we've done some really fun stuff and we're looking at what we're going to do next season. So we're going to take a very brief break, probably about a month, and we will see you back then with some changes. So I wanted to put a thank you out to everyone who's been faithfully listening and watching and giving us feedback on our content. And I want to ask if anybody has any ideas for the next session. We are completely open to anything that you suggest. Even if you DM us, if you leave a comment on the episode, tell us what you liked, tell us what you think should be different, tell us what you'd like to see on next season. That could be make it shorter, make it longer, have this person on, talk about this. We want that feedback. It's kind of lonely over here. I get to talk to you, but I don't get to hear from you. So I would love to hear from you and any feedback at all on this first season. I really appreciated the fact that so many of you have stuck through 20 episodes and been so positive about what we're doing here. So we're excited to do it again. So for this episode, we're going to look at all of the things that we've explored over the past 20, and I'm going to take out for you some takeaways. Now, this might feel like a recap, but it's not really a recap. We're doing something a little different. We're going to take the top 10 ideas that you can use for your mental health toolkit. So when I say mental health toolkit, what I mean is this. Every one of us should have a set of things that we go to when we need support. So think about it. You have a medicine cabinet. If you have a cold, you could probably open it up and find your thermometer, your cough drops, your aspirin, whatever you need, and you keep that there. You always have a little bit of NyQuil, right? It's all there. And with us, I think in mental health, we don't really do it that way. We don't really have a toolkit or a medicine box for when we need support. So what I'm going to give you today is I'm going to give you 10 tips that you can put in your little toolbox and carry around with you. And maybe if you don't need them, that's great. But if you need them, that they're there. And a lot of these are real good reminders of some of the things that you might have learned, but maybe need a reminder about. So over the course of the season, we've talked about so many things like relationships, boundaries, resilience, mindfulness, AI, plastic surgery, attachment styles, anxiety, fears and phobias. We have talked about so many fun things, but really all of that is just about ways to learn to understand yourself. That's what the whole podcast has been about for me, is the ability to learn something new that makes you reflect and look at yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 10 things and give them to you as reminders of how to continue to do that growth. So we always have struggles. That's life. We've talked about that life is always going to give us something unexpected or give us something hard. And the stronger that we are in ourselves and the better that our mental health is, the more likely we are to be able to manage those things. So I want you to believe that a struggle or a mental health moment is not going to ruin you, that you have resources and tools to help you through. And it's so interesting because we do this too in other parts of our life where we write things down, we make lists, we keep track of things. And if you go to the supermarket, a lot of us are writing a list, but when it comes to mental health, we're not. So I'm going to give you something today and you can put it in your phone, you can write it down, or you can just use this as a rehash. But I want you to really consider, what's your mental health toolkit? What do you do when you don't feel good? Do you have a go-to? Do you have a coping skill, a person, or do you sit in it a little bit too long? And cautionary tale, people with severe anxiety and depression often are stuck in that moment. So what I would like to remind you of is that if you have that moment and it passes, you're healthy. Your mental health is good. If you have that moment and it stays, you're going to end up struggling for a while and could end up with a mental health disorder. So, what I'm saying to you is if you have a mental health disorder, get treatment, learn the tools. If you have normal struggles, have a toolkit. Either way, we all need it. I have a toolkit, and I think you should too. So I think that mental health is a lot about breaking patterns and being reminded that we have to change things that don't serve us. So, what we're going to do is we're going to go over the top 10 pattern breakers and reminders. There is so much that we need to learn, but there's also a lot we need to unlearn. How much of your struggle or how much of the things that bother you are things that you know you should be doing differently or that you've just done a really long time? We're going to talk today about pattern breaking and about doing something different by reminding yourself to do it. You know, you've heard the old adage, in order to change a habit, it takes 30 days or 5 times. And none of that is really an exact science. But I can tell you, if you do something enough and remind yourself of something enough, it does change you. And we all have the capability to change, every single one of us. So, we're also going to do in this episode at the end a very special little intro to a book that I really like. And it's a book that gives you some guidelines for connecting to yourself. So, the whole goal with anything that we've been doing in this podcast is to get you to recognize things that you need to work on and get you to connect to yourself. So, at the end, I'm going to give you 5 tips that are going to help you to connect to who you really are and help you live according to that. So we're talking about a goal here. We're talking about a goal of an authentic life. And we're going to get into what that really means because a lot of people talk about authenticity and being authentic, but we're going to talk a little bit more about what that really means. So let's dive into the top 10. You know what I'm going to say for number 1. We talk about it in almost every single episode, and it is self-talk, right? How many times do you get in a loop and you get that nasty self-talk in your head? It's probably not even your voice. It's probably the voice of somebody who wasn't nice to you or the world that wasn't nice to you. But we talk about self-talk a lot because I think it is the crucial thing for aligning yourself to where you need to be, for aligning your mood, aligning your perspective, right? So I want you listening to what you're saying to yourself, and I want you correcting it. I want you being kind to yourself, and I want you doing the thing where you're actually listening to it and then changing it. If you're getting ready to do something and you're talking down to yourself, you're going to go into that thing and you're not going to do it well. But imagine if you became your own cheerleader. It's not that weird to be able to touch your own arm and go, "You got this. You got this." I want you to try that. At a moment when you're really struggling, I want you to just touch your hand with your other hand and say to yourself, "You got this. You're going to be okay." And you say it out loud, and you will be amazed at the way that your mood shifts the tiniest bit. Because imagine if you had a person there doing that. It would help. You can be your biggest help sometimes. Self-talk is where it starts. So write in your little toolkit, how's my self-talk? Let me check in with it and let me see what I'm saying inside my head that's creating my whole view of the universe. Number 2, automatic thoughts. We got to be aware of all of the automatic thoughts that come up to feed our self-talk. That your brain lies to you is the biggest truth, right? Your brain lies to you. Nobody wants to hear that. Everybody thinks their brain says only things that are true. Your brain tells you things that are not true, and it will sometimes tell you that impulsively and immediately. And sometimes you just need a second to sit with that and go, that's an automatic thought. So, for example, we're talking about in the last one, you're getting ready to do something. Well, if your automatic thought is you don't do anything right, then you better work on that and you better re-edit that thought with a second, more appropriate thought. So remember, the second thought that comes is usually the truth, and sometimes it comes within 10 seconds. But if you don't look for it, it's never really going to be accessible to you. So when it's, I can't do this, wait a minute, do our self talk, right? It's okay, you can do this. Where's the second thought? Of course you can do this. You got this. You've done this before. So, number 2, your brain lies to you. Monitor your automatic thoughts and question them. Number 3, emotional regulation. Just saw a post on Instagram and I loved it. And it said that if we solved the problem of emotional regulation, that there would be no more war and no more anger and no more ugly behavior. And I really had to think about that. And I thought, well, it's not wrong. Emotional regulation is just how we outwardly behave based on our emotions, how we think based on our emotions, how much our emotions rule who we are, what we do, what we say. So, how do we work on emotional regulation? If you look in your toolkit and you see that that's number 3, that's reminding you to label what you're feeling. I'm really angry right now. Okay, what are you angry about? Well, I'm frustrated. Okay, what are you frustrated about? I'm hurt. Okay, you're not angry, you're hurt. And when you're hurt, that's a whole different way to go than when you're angry. So label your emotions. Remember, we talked about how emotions are like weather. They're supposed to flow through you, not stay forever. Doesn't rain all the time. It only rains sometimes. You're not sad all the time. You're only sad sometimes. So keep in mind what you avoid in terms of emotions controls you. Think about it. There are so many emotions that are ugly and we don't want to feel. Embarrassment, rejection, shame. If we avoid these things, they control us. You will live if you get embarrassed. You will tolerate that. But you avoiding embarrassment may keep you from a lot of things. So, what you avoid in terms of emotions, you're not regulating and it's going to control you. Number 4, connection heals. One of the most simple things that I do in therapy with people is remind them to talk to other people. We do it in every episode in one way or another. Connection is not just about talking to someone, it's that reflecting with someone can heal you. So you might be down in it. You might be having a day. You might be on the couch, unshowered all day. And sometimes just a phone call or a conversation can pull you out of it. Has that ever happened to you where you got lost in your head? Connection heals. Good connection, healthy connection. There's a quote that I heard on my friend Sue. She has a great podcast, a Well To You podcast. And she said, "You can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm." And I thought that was brilliant. And our connections cannot just be about us giving. When I'm saying connection heals, I'm saying let's have some warmth from other people. You can't just be the one that gives and gives in a connection. And that's sometimes why we withdraw from connection, because it exhausts us. What are the connections in your life where you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep them warm? Who's keeping you warm? Connection heals. Number 5, and I love this one, growth is an orientation. Just like you are gay or straight, you are a growth oriented person or you are not. And what happens is if we are growth oriented, can look around and see the people who are not. Now, can that change? Sometimes. But what I find is that inherently there are people who have, and this is my opinion, have this growth orientation in them so deep, and other people who are firmly rooted in not changing. So you're here, you're listening to this. I already know that you're growth oriented, and I want you to remember that about yourself. So when you are not feeling great and you look in your toolkit and you see growth is an orientation, I want you to remember that you are always growing and changing. So where you are right now in the crappy feeling and the stressful feeling is going to be different in a day, in an hour, in a week, because you're growing and you're learning. One of my favorite qualities in people is curiosity. I surround myself with curious people. I love people who ask questions and who are creative and who explore. You are growth oriented. You're here because you're growth oriented. Remember that when you're feeling stuck, is that stuck is temporary for you because you're going to learn how to get out of it. Number 6, know your values. We're going to talk a little bit more about this at the end, but I want you to embrace the fact that you are different. I want you to understand what you believe, and I want you to operate from that. So if you are feeling down and you're in a dilemma and you go to your toolkit and say, know my values, try to find what you really believe about something And a lot of times when we're struggling, it's because something has come up that violates our values. It violates what we believe about the way the world should be. Now, that's going to happen. The world is not aligned with your values. It's not aligned with mine. It's aligned with everybody's values. But you have to know yours in order to sometimes know what direction to take. And this can help with decision making. A lot of times people struggle in their mental health because they have a decision paralysis. They can't decide what to do, how to make a decision. Now I'll go back to connection here. Sometimes that's where you can talk to somebody and work that through. But I will also say that you have to be able to look in yourself and find out, what do I really believe? And that's hard to find sometimes. You got to look deep. But that's a form of self-care, right? The ability to take that time and go and look deep and see what you really believe about something before you make a decision. Number 7, self-care is actually coping. We've talked a lot about self-care, but self-care is coping, which means that you need to have a list in your toolkit of your coping skills, of the things that work for you. And this has been one of the most effective techniques that I've had in dealing with people who are very anxious or very depressed. Is when I was going through a lot of struggles for myself, I didn't have coping skills. I didn't have things I could do to make myself feel better. So I didn't know how to take care of myself. My self-care was low. But what I learned was that there were certain things that worked for me and certain things that didn't. And I didn't try to do the things that didn't work for me. If breathing exercises didn't work for me, I didn't do those. But I made a list. And I made a list. I had no money. And my list was things I could do if I had money, things I could do if I don't have money, things I can do outside if it's nice. And that list was something that I used to carry around in my bag with me. And if I didn't feel well, I would look at the list and I go, I have $20. Okay, I have money. And my list would be go to the movies. And I could go to the movies and I could disappear. And when I came out, I had taken care of myself by just escaping for a little bit. Oh, I don't have money? Okay, on that list, I could go to the bookstore. Okay, I go sit in the bookstore, I get a stack of books, and I read. Doesn't cost anything, right? Going outside. Oh, there's that park that I like, and there's a really nice bench. I don't feel like walking, but I'm going to sit there, right? I want you to have a list like that. And if you can remember it in your head, that's great. I was not in an emotional state where I was accessible. Those things were accessible to me in my brain. And what I say is that coping list is a gift to your future self. So you take the self that you're in the good moment and you write that list because your future self may have a bad moment where it might not be readily available to think of those things. So in my moments, I remember specifically several times when I was really having a hard time and I just went to the movies because it was the first thing on that list and I had $20. And I think that I couldn't access my coping skills and I needed a toolkit and it worked. So since then, I've given that task to a lot of people and everybody I've given it to has found it to be this sort of gift from their good, healthy moment self to their self in a moment when they couldn't think clearly. And you can put anything you want on those lists, big or small. Number 8, priorities change, adjust your perspective. So think about perspective. Perspective is one of the things I work on in therapy a lot. Now, perspective, think of it as the lens that you look through on to the world. We all have a perspective. You've been around people who have a negative perspective, right? You think of the word curmudgeon or cranky or just nasty or negative. Those people have a perspective on the world, that the world is bad or it's just a negative perspective. And what happens when you see them? They're complainers, they're miserable. We don't want to be that. We can't be happy all the time, but we do have to work on our perspective. We have to pay attention to our lens. Now, me, like everyone else, my lens gets cloudy sometimes. I'll get stuck in a negative thought loop for a day, and then I'll wake up the next day and go, okay, that felt terrible. I don't really want to do that again. So priorities change, your perspective has to change. If you suddenly have a new priority, you have a baby, Your perspective has to change. You're not going to get up every day and go to the gym and go to your job and have your makeup perfect and do all of the things and go to the club. Your whole priority change. The baby is everything. It's not just a baby, but there are a million different ways that our priority changes over the course of our lives. And you have to keep up with it. Don't get stuck. When something changes, roll with it and go, okay, what's my lens on this? What's my perspective? Oh, I have this job I don't like right now and I have a terrible commute, but that's my priority. So what's my perspective? I'm going to do it for a year. After that, I'm free. Okay, you adjusted your perspective according to your priorities. So remember, your priorities have to change all the time, whether you like it or not. But you have to adjust your perspective. Can't always control the priorities, but you can control the perspective. Number 9, regulate your nervous system. We just talked about this in episode 19 about mindfulness and how you have this nervous system inside your body that is the reason why we say mental health is physical health. A lot of the reason that you need this toolkit is because you get stuck. And when you get stuck, it means your nervous system is being affected. So you being anxious, you being worried about things, you being vigilant and stressed has now made your body go into a state where it holds it. So I need you thinking about, how are we being mindful? How are we being present moment aware? If you haven't heard episode 19 and you're really struggling with this and you feel that you're keyed up and hypervigilant, go listen to that one. It may help you a little. But mindfulness is just present moment awareness, right? Are we in the moment? Are we taking deep breaths? Are we not letting our bodies hold the stress of our mind and our life? Um, One thing I heard recently and I really liked is that your body hears everything your brain says. Think about that. Your body hears everything your brain says. So when you're catastrophizing in your head and getting really worried and upset, your body is reacting to that. And that's very, very concerning. If you're afraid of what's going to happen today when you go outside, for whatever reason, maybe anxiety inflated it, your body is preparing to be afraid. And you know that isn't good for you. So if you are having a moment and you go to your toolkit and it says regulate your nervous system, I want you to think about the grounding exercises, the breathing exercises, the present moment awareness. Do you need a break for what your brain is telling, from what your brain is telling your body? And we should be doing that every day. So this is important stuff. This is affecting your physical health if you don't pay attention. And number 10, dream. And I love this one. This is the thing that's missing in so many of the patients that I have seen over the years. The ability to dream and be excited about the future, the ability to dream and fantasize about what you want. One of the first things to go when we're in a dark place is our belief that the future will be better than the present. So I would even put it in your little toolkit that way. The future will be better than the present. But the only way that it's better is if we dream and if we consider what the future might be. So some people would look at that as goal setting. Not really talking about goal setting. I'm talking about setting a target, something that you really want. One of the things that bonded me to my now husband is that we spent a lot of time in the beginning as we got to know each other talking about our wishes and our dreams. And you will learn a whole lot about a person when you find out what it is they really want and what their target is in life. And if you're not having those conversations with your partner, something's missing. I see a lot of couples and I say, what are you guys excited about? What's your 5-year plan? What do you think is going to happen after the kids are out of the house? And a lot of them kind of look at each other and look at me and go, you mean you haven't thought about it? This isn't anxiety worrying about the future, which is what we do. This is excited target setting of, I want to have that boat someday, or I want to be able to go to Italy someday, or I want a little corner of my house to be a place I can put a yoga mat in, or I want to be able to spend more time with my nieces as they grow up, right? So we're setting targets when we dream. Everything big that ever happens to us typically is because we first fantasized or dreamed about it, right? Think about the person who starts a business or the person who goes out and creates something. These are people who said, "Oh, I'd really like to do that." And then they set a target and they made it happen. So in your mental health toolkit, the ability to dream is a reminder that there's something more for you, but you have to believe that it could happen. Because once you think about something or you dream about it and you set it into motion, the pathway's there. You're not aimless. You're not wandering around surviving life. You're going, I'm heading towards something. And how much better do we feel when we're headed towards something? So make sure that you're dreaming. So that's your 10. And I want you to use these to support yourself. I want you to hold yourself accountable to these. And I want you to actually make sure that if you're struggling with any of these, that you pay attention to why. In therapy, we always say that the resistance of someone tells us as much about them as the success that they have in something. So if somebody really struggles to do something, understanding why helps me to learn how to make it better. So if any one of those things is particularly hard for you, think about why, because that'll tell you something about yourself and what you need to work on. So the next part of this session is we're going to talk about a way of helping to align yourself so that every day you aren't needing the toolkit, so that every day you're living according to your values and you're living in a way that helps you follow the path to the targets that you have and that helps you feel good about yourself. One of the biggest struggles that I see with people is the sense of shame, guilt, regret at the end of the day. A lot of people struggle with insomnia and anxiety and difficult evenings because they have so much regret about their own behavior over the course of the day. So they rethink something they said. Why did I do that? And what it comes down to is they weren't living in a way that they really wanted to be in the world, or they wore a mask all day. And then at the end of the night, they felt guilty for that. These 5 things I'm going to introduce to you now are going to teach you to feel good about the way you spend the day and the way that you are in the world. So when you lay your head down on that pillow, you're not feeling regret, shame, or any of that because you lived according to your values. So this all starts from a book, and the book is called The Fifth Agreement. Now, there's another book called The Four Agreements. Don't worry about that. It's all the same. But The Four Agreements changed my life. There have been 2 or 3 books I've read in my life that absolutely transformed me. This was one, and this is why I'm sharing it with you. And why I saved this conversation to the end is because I think it's one of the most powerful conversations that I can give you. And I so believe in the idea of these 5 agreements that I have it posted on the wall here in my office. And it's not for other people, it's for me because I can look at that and it's like looking in a mirror and reminding me of the 5 things that I need to do to be my best self. So the book, The Fifth Agreement, is Don Miguel and Don Jose Ruiz, and they're a father and son team, and this book comes from Toltec wisdom, ancient wisdom. So these 5 principles have been around forever, and they've been utilized by people in simpler times and work now. And these work for me, and this is really how I live my life. And everybody that I've shared these with, they resonate. It resonates. And the thing I love is it's a real simple book. You can read it quickly, but it's one of those books that you go back to and can remind you to keep aligned. The book is subtitled A Practical Guide to Self-Mastery. So self-mastery is exactly what we're talking about here. We're talking about how do you control and drive this bus that is you? Self-mastery is the answer. So there are 5 quick agreements, and these agreements are statements that remind you of the best way to live. You could think of it like a morality tale. You could think of it like people use the 10 commandments as a way to live. This is more specific to self-development. So I'm going to give you them one at a time and explain them. And it'll be very interesting to see what resonates with you. What resonates with you might be something that either you're already doing or that you really think you need to do. Number one, be impeccable with your word. Now think about that. What does that mean? Be impeccable with your word. It doesn't mean be careful about what you say. It doesn't mean say it perfectly. What it means is that everything that comes out of you must reflect what is actually in your heart and your values. That truth is peace. We've heard people say where if you tell the truth, you never have to remember the lie, right? It's easier to just tell the truth because then you don't have to remember a story. It's along those lines. It's the idea that if everything you speak comes from your heart and your values and your belief, you can't feel bad about it at the end of the day. It might be uncomfortable sometimes, but there's a quote by Audre Lorde where she says something to the effect of, "Nothing that I have made peace with you can hold against me." And I love that. If you are in yourself and who you are, then anything that you say and if you stand behind it, if people don't like it, what else have you got? That's your truth. So being impeccable with your word is not don't tell a lie, but it's making sure that every time you open your mouth, what comes out represents who you really are and what you really believe. So when you're lying in bed at night struggling with the thing you said, you're struggling because it probably didn't really reflect what you meant. And we all do it. We all say impulsive things and we speak before we think, and that's human nature. But this is an awareness of that in a way that keeps you from telling people what they want to hear. It keeps you from wearing a mask. Be impeccable with your word, number one. Number two, don't take anything personally. Oh, life changes when you really believe this one. Don't take anything personally. What other people do and say is a projection of their own reality, a projection of what is in their head. And I have told you once, I've told you a million times, what's in other people's heads is none of your business. So don't take things personally. And yeah, whatever happens may feel personal and it may be about you, but it is a reflection of what's in their mind about you. I heard something once where that someone said that you exist as 100 different people because every person that knows you has a different conceptualization of you based on their own lens and what they know about you. So you can't craft some imaginary thing that everybody sees. Oh, this is my image. This is who I am, because it's not accurate. What's accurate is what you believe. So other people's opinion of you and other people having something to say to you is more about them than it is about you. So a lot of you that I have talked to over the years in therapy are people pleasers. And people pleasers are people who are taking everything that everyone says and internalizing it and then shaping themselves to fit the other person's view. Think about that. If you try to shape yourself to fit the view of everybody else, you're looking at 100 different people. You have to be 100 different people. It's exhausting. Don't take it personally. Things hurt. They do hurt when people say things or they don't understand who we are. But the impact of that hurt cannot be so great that it derails you. Number three, don't make assumptions. A lot of what we do in life is the noise in our own head deciphering our world. And of course, we make assumptions every day. It's part of how we live. But as practice, I want you to consider how often you're doing that when you could just ask a question. And I have people in my life that I adore that will ask everything. Why did you do that? What does that mean? I don't understand. And I love that. I know with my team that I work with here is none of them really make assumptions. They ask questions. I don't understand what that is. Now that takes a certain kind of person, right? It takes a lot of sort of fortitude to be able to ask a question everything, right? And I think that making assumptions locks us in to all the fear-based thinking. So, not making assumptions. Misunderstandings are really the cause of a lot of pain. Think about dating when you're sitting across from someone and you don't know them and it's a first date. You are all assumptions all the time. That whole date is you trying to figure out that person. So you're making all kinds of assumptions. Oh, he's wearing that shirt. What does that mean? Right? She's wearing heels. What does that mean? Oh, look at the makeup, or there's a piercing. Assumptions are really generalizations that have great odds of being wrong. So I say, question it. Question everything. Question everything that happens to you before you assume. Because your assumptions could be right if you're intuitive, but if you're anxious, your assumptions are feeding the wrong answer. If you are anxious because you think somebody doesn't like you, and then you assume everything they do is because they don't like you, then by the time you get out of that date, they don't like you. You've already answered your own question. They don't like me, I'm done. And then how do you behave when somebody doesn't like you? Not your best self. Think about why people fall in love. People fall in love on those dates because they assume the other person likes them too. And that's really exciting. So that assumption might be a good assumption. You can read all the cues, but the negative assumptions are the ones that really get us. So making assumptions is dangerous. Don't make assumptions. Number 4, always do your best. Now, this sounds like always do your best. You have to be perfect. No, always do your best means that your best is different every single day. And all you can do is the best you can do that day. We've all had that night where we didn't sleep and we had to get up and function. Your best on that day is not going to be your best on a day where you had a good night's sleep, but that's what you can give. Always doing your best means that you showed up, you gave what you could give, and that you did it, that you didn't hold back, and that you didn't make yourself smaller. Always do your best is you show up, you be proud of what you are and who you are, and you be connected to your limitations. So doing your best is about the idea of learning yourself and learning your limits and learning what you can do and can't do. My best is I'm not going to run a marathon. I'll take a walk with you. That's me doing my best, right? So you have to think about, are you showing up with your best self? This is one of those other things about nighttime ruminations is we go, "Oh, I should have done that," or "I didn't do enough." Well, you can be hard on yourself if you didn't do enough, and you should have, but you can't be hard on yourself if you couldn't do more. So think about that. Do your best, but your best changes. And number 5, be skeptical, but learn to listen. And I love this because in my job, I use this all the time. I have things on my couch that I hear that don't sound anything like the way I would live or what my values are, but I have to listen. And I can be skeptical and I can go, why are they doing that? That doesn't sound good, but I'm still going to listen. How many people do you know that shut the door on a person the second they find out something about them? Oh, I don't relate to that. And then they don't listen. I want you to listen. Think about politics. It's the easy example is that a lot of people will decide which side of the fence they're on. And then everybody on the other side of the fence is somebody I don't really understand or want to talk to. And I find that listening to people who have a different side of the story can be incredibly enlightening. It doesn't mean you have to change your mind, but I think I'm in the business of stories and I love hearing people's stories. So I have learned so much about the world, which is why I think I can even do this podcast by listening to what other people's experiences and stories have been when they are different than mine. So don't assume that a difference is an ending. Listen, you can be skeptical, and I want you to be skeptical. I don't want you to take anything at face value. I want you to ask those questions. Be skeptical, but learn to listen. Don't believe anything immediately. When you watch the news or you read something, just like we said, don't believe yourself immediately. Your automatic thoughts can lie to you, right? Be skeptical, sit back. There's this great idea about debate. I don't think anybody understands how to debate anymore. I'm not talking about political debates. I'm talking about conversations where I could sit in a room with someone who is completely opposite in all of their beliefs from me, hear what they have to say. They'll hear what I have to say. And then we kind of share those ideas back and forth. And neither one of us has to win or be right, but it's the idea that someone could listen to you even if they don't like what you're saying. And I think one of the big examples of this is in relationships, which sounds odd because you wouldn't think somebody is in a relationship with somebody that they're opposed to. But there's so much that a partner is going to say to you. And I know from being married, the partner is going to say something to you and you're going to be like, what? That's crazy. They really think that? But if you immediately demean them, shut them down, or assume that you're right, you're missing out on something that's really important to them. So if they have an interest you don't understand, a belief system that you don't really align with, debate, listen to what they have to say, share what you have to say. Be skeptical, but listen. So these 5 things are very simple things, but these are like little guidelines and reminders. And for me, all 5 of those are things I want to do. I believe in them. So if I have a bad day, I can say, which one of these things did I violate in myself today? Was I not impeccable with my word? Did I make assumptions? And it's a beautiful little tool to add to your toolkit to be able to understand why you get frustrated with your own behavior. Those aren't about anyone else. Those are really about you and how you process the world. So the goal of all of those things, if you look at the book, is authenticity. And authenticity is something that is thrown around a lot, but I want to define it in a way that makes sense because I think it's an important concept. Authenticity, the definition is something that is real, legitimate, and true. But I don't really think that's an accurate description when we talk about authenticity in ourselves. So I have this instead. Authenticity is self awareness, it's integrity to values that is consistent in our behavior and communication. It's a reflection of our commitment to our own values, beliefs, and principles rather than external validation or social pressure. So, authenticity is I behave what I believe. And that sounds simple, but it's really not. How many of us are wearing masks or fitting in or sucking it up when we shouldn't be sucking it up? Authenticity means you live the life that you want. Now, there always are going to be restrictions to that, and there are going to be challenges, but I am trying in my life to be fiercely authentic. And what happens is you become unique. You become an outlier because I think so many people are not really authentic. So I'm kind of challenging you here to be as real as you are. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute because that's easier said than done. But you're here because you want to do that. You're here listening because you are special and you are different and you want to be better. So many people walk this earth and do not ascribe to be the best version of themselves. So many people are not growth oriented because it is hard to be authentic. You would think it would be the most easy, natural thing in the world, but we live in a society that encourages you to be a cookie cutter. Look around you in most places that you go. I always say go to Target. Everybody looks the same in Target. Every girl has the same hair. She's wearing the same clothes. And so many of us are aspiring to a look. And guys are the same. Everybody is out there trying to be cookie cutter. But what about when you walk in somewhere and you see somebody with an outfit that is just different? or hair that is rainbow colored. I am attracted to those people because those people feel like they're expressing something, and it's almost a rebellion against everybody else. So authenticity, whoever you are, can feel like a rebellion if it doesn't look like everybody else. But I'm asking you to do it anyway. And that's hard. So a lot of times, though, that means exposing ourselves a little bit. Being who we are is sharing something with the world. And a lot of us don't feel great about who we are and where we've been. We all have scars. I have scars emotionally and physically, right? And we all don't have perfect bodies and we don't have to. But a lot of us feel like having gone through things and being imperfect makes us less than. And I believe the opposite. I believe that I want the person with the scars and I want to talk to the person who's had experiences. And I'm curious about the rainbow hair. And the more that we can look at that authenticity and normalize it versus normalizing trying to look like everyone else, the healthier we are. And there's a great story about it. So instead of a poem, I'm going to read you a short excerpt from that story. And the interesting thing is, this story is from 100 years ago and it still stands. And a lot of you have probably heard about it, the Velveteen Rabbit. And it's so fitting that we're ending the season with this because it's one of my favorite, most powerful stories to tell. Because I really, it resonates with me for myself and for a lot of my patients. And it was a story written in 1921 for Harper's Bazaar magazine by Marjorie Williams, and was later made the next year into a book because it was wildly popular. And in the Velveteen Rabbit, there's a little boy and he has toys. And there are some, think of Toy Story, right? There's some shiny new toys that came in, and the old toys worry that they are not going to be loved. And I really think Toy Story came from the Velveteen Rabbit, by the way. Um, but in this story, there is a little rabbit and he's really kind of been loved. He was the boy's favorite toy. And as the boy gets older, he starts to go to the shinier, newer toys. And the rabbit is very shabby and very worn. And there's a wise old horse in the story. And he talks to the rabbit and he gives the rabbit sort of a push to remind him of what he's worth. And this is what he says. He says, "You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily or have sharp edges who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off and your eyes drop out and you get loose in your joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all because once you're real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand." That is so powerful and so wise. And it's really interesting in the story, the bunny gets a magical fairy who comes and puts magic on him and lets him out with the real bunnies, and his life begins for real. And all of the shabbiness and all of the love that made him who he was takes him to this next beautiful place in his life. So it's a very beautiful story, but the beauty isn't in the story itself, it's in the interpretation. So real isn't perfect. And all of the things we talked about today in this season are about you getting closer to what the real you is and the healthy you and how that can change your life. The power of authenticity is that you shine your light. And I believe that everyone has something inside of them that makes them different from everybody else. And that's my personal belief. Some people would say that's a soul. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as if we're all born with something that makes us uniquely us. And some of us are able to identify it and shine it outwards. And some of us have had lives where that was not encouraged. So when you do it, it's an incredible victory. And I want to encourage you to find the strength in your uniqueness and take care of yourself to foster and grow that, because that is your superpower, is your ability to give the world the thing that only you can give. But if you're caught up in, your own thinking, and you're caught up in your own anxiety and your mood is low, you're not giving the world what you really are, and you're not showing it for reasons that are not even things you can't overcome. They're hard, but you can overcome them. And I think about the story of Vincent van Gogh, and everybody knows the story. He was this tortured artist, and now we can look at him and say, oh, he probably had bipolar disorder, and he painted beautiful paintings from the looking through the window of the sanitarium where he stayed when his mental health wasn't good. And he cut off his ear to give it to a prostitute, and all these stories. And but the bottom line of that is that Vincent struggled because he had something inside of him. And we can see that now when we see the art. And in his lifetime only sold one painting. And now is one of the most prolific artists, in the world. And we see his work everywhere on clothes and in museums. And it's just ubiquitous. We've all seen Van Gogh. And the tragedy of Van Gogh was that his life was wasted in the moment. He left a legacy and he did this beautiful stuff, but he died alone and unhappy and sad and missing an ear. That's how bad it was. And there's a song about his life, which I encourage you to look up, and it's called Vincent. And it says, "This world was never meant for one as beautiful as you." And that's the message that I want to give you, is that don't let it happen after you're gone. What good is that, right? Be seen for who you are now. Let that light come out. And now you have some work to do. So before we get together again next season, you've got some real thinking to do about your mental health toolkit, about incorporating some of the things that you've learned, about becoming more authentic. And I think that's where we're going to start next season is, we're going to give you more tools and more things to help foster that growth. So I can't wait to see you next season, my sunshines. And I can't wait to see how much work you're going to do with all of this information and where we're even going to go next. So I will see you next time. And until then, bye.